Let's look at the IEP. It's okay also to bring notes with you. You need to, I believe you need to be courteous. If you're bringing somebody with you, you need to let the school people know that someone is coming, who is coming, etc. The same courtesies that you would want. You're entitled to have all evaluations, all assessments before you go to the meeting, not after you go. Have you ever tried to read those assessments? I mean, I worked on those assessments when I was a teacher, okay? You can't sit down and read the assessment and make decisions for your child in 30 minutes, an hour. I wouldn't do it as a lawyer, and you shouldn't do it as a parent. So all evaluations on all assessments must be in your hands before you go to the meeting and not the night before at midnight. You need to have time to read them through. You have specialists that you can use. Who are your specialists? Oh, you all have pediatricians. Okay. You all maybe have private speech therapists. Maybe you have a friend that's a special ed teacher. You're entitled to talk to these people and find out what they would recommend. If the child is seeing a therapist, you certainly want to talk to the therapist to see what the therapist is recommending. The more knowledge you have, the better off you are. Okay, if you look at the top where it says, some people just got the two-page transition page, not the whole IEP, and it starts with 4. Now, they move transition up to before the measurable goals and objectives, okay? When I started, it was at the end, stuck in the back where nobody could see it, or in your 15 minutes of time, you had no time to get to the transition services, and when your child was 12 or 13, you really weren't too worried about transition services, okay? So they moved it up. They're trying to tell you something. This is the most, in my mind, the most neglected area of the IEP. Okay, you need a statement of transition services needs that focuses on the child's course of study. So, if the child wants to go to vocational school, what are the skills that he has that he already has? What are the skills that he might need? If your child is going to college, is he going to pass the entrance tests? Is he going to have to take remediation math, or is he going to have to take remediation English? These are all things that need to be addressed in the needs of the child. Where do you get these needs from? Where do you get these needs from? From the child? From where else? Your assessments, your questionnaires, the teachers that have worked, your past IEPs. Look at the present levels of performance and look at the past IEPs and see where they've gone and where the child has grown and where the child needs yet to grow. Okay. And then it has to list the assessments, okay? They can't list vocational testing to be done in June of 2020. You want to know when it's going to be done, what's going to be done, how quickly it's going to be done. And I believe that that's what you start with at the beginning when you have your first transition meeting, is setting all of that up. I also recommend, whether it be an IEP meeting or a transition meeting, before you leave the meeting and you know you need another meeting, you go around and you set a date and time for that meeting with all the people that are present. Because once they go and they scatter to the wind, it really takes a long time to get a hold of them. And the only way to make the time between meetings shorter is to set up your next meeting at your last meeting. So I always recommend that to my clients as well, or my used-to-be clients. You want to be specific in the assessments. You want to know the name. You want to know what they're testing. You want to know when it's the date it's going to be done, and the results. You want the results down here if you have them. It is like an MFE. It is. Except it doesn't have the same. An MFE is mandated by the state for different disabilities what you must test. This is not really mandated by the state. This is what the team should come together to understand that the child needs. There's no list of tests or areas that must be, to my knowledge. Is that true, Bob? Yeah. There is no list. There's no mandate in those tests, but it is your MFE for transition, absolutely. Okay. And when do you do the MFE or the evaluation? Before you write the goals or after you write the goals? Before you write the goals, absolutely. How else, what do you base it on? Okay. And a records review is different than a full MFE or a full multi-factored evaluation. My concern with the records review is that if your child is graduating at 18, okay, and you need to substantiate that they have a disability so that they can become eligible for a 504 plan, some of the colleges won't take tests that are more than 3 years old, okay. The records review is just that. It's a records review. There are no standardized tests. And I know because I have a nephew that's in special ed, and he's 18 and he doesn't want to hear the word test ever again. So it's a real pickle. You have to look at what your kids need, what they want, and what you think you want. But if you want that child to be able to use their disability and to get accommodations, you have to have current testing or the schools won't accept it. And then what's going to happen? You have to go out and pay for the testing before they will accept them. Okay, let's look at the next part is the goals and objectives. And you have to write a goal and an objective to education and training. And I sort of think education and training, in my mind, are the same thing, okay? And your goal could be that Johnny will be aware of 90% of his Section 504 rights and responsibilities. That could be your goal, and then you break that down into objective. Your goal could be that he needs to take remediation English, and that's instruction, and they will say he's at the such and such level of reading, he needs to get to such and such, etc. As I said, Carrie Agins is going to come next week, and she's going to describe specifically how to write these. The important thing for me is where it says person, agency of responsibility, okay? Because now they're not going to put down somebody's name, but they certainly will say their position. If they're an intervention specialist, if they're from an outside agency, what agency they're from, if it's the special ed teacher, they have to write this down. And what type of activities might they do? They might do role playing to teach about 504. They might do small group. We're doing a large group instruction here. You might want the EEOC to come in and talk to them. You know, we have a federal EEOC downtown. They will send out people to talk to the kids too. You may decide, the school may decide if you all want that, to have a general, small group type session.
Yes, what's an EEOC?
Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Okay, and they monitor the rights of people with disabilities or other civil rights groups. They monitor the responsibility that all the agencies have to them. Okay, thank you for asking. Okay, then we're going to go on to employment. Who here doesn't want their child to do some type of employment? No one, right?
Oh.
He won't?
No, she won't be able to.
Well, there are some kids that are very limited, and the only thing I can tell you is that I had a cousin that never spoke a word, okay, could never be left alone by himself, and he had a job. Now, he had a job at the developmental center, which I know they're doing away with, which I will avoid discussing here today. But I think you can tell by my attitude and by my own family experience. And my cousin knew when he came home, he knew he had a check, and he knew that it meant something important. And he was thrilled and excited to show us his mother, and every year in December, he would get a bonus check. Okay.
See, that's way further than my daughter is. Like, way further.
Then you have to go with the child's needs and what they are, absolutely. But the majority of us would like our children to do something that is worthwhile, something that will help make them feel good about themselves and make them appear as educated people. So you're going to talk about employment and what they might need to do for employment. Do they need to try out little jobs? Do they need to go to vocational school? Do they need to try, I know like Beechwood has a cooking school. Some of them have Excel Tech. Mayfield has Excel Tech. where the kids can go and learn to work on computers. You have to find the niche for your kid, and that should be addressed in the transition plan. You can't expect your kid to age out at 21 and suddenly go out and find a job if you've not prepared him for the job, not prepared how to go about getting the job, not prepared with him with the agencies that he or she must be involved with. And then the living skills, okay? Did you know how to write a check when you were 18? I didn't, okay? I didn't. And I can tell you a funny little story. Where I went to school, sometimes they would only let you cash a check for $1. And so I would write my check for $1, but then I had to pay 20 cents to cash that check. And then my father called me up about 6 weeks later because he also was paying to cash that check. And so what happened? What did we get out of $1? Maybe 60 cents, okay? Kids don't know that. And you have to teach them those kind of things. They have to know about a checkbook. They have to know that, you know, if they're some kids will live in an apartment. They have to know that when the first comes around, they have to pay their rent. Those are all part of life skills. Learning to use the washing machine, like I had to learn to use the washing machine. If your child can do all of this and can function without any help or any further education, then you don't have to do this. They don't have to do this part. I would think that there are very few 18-year-olds that won't need some sort of life skill. They may not need a full immersed program for life skills, but they will need life skills in some way or another. So I believe that very few will be exempted from this area. That's my belief. What's the most important thing you need to do for your child? Educate yourself. Who's going to fight for your child? You. Is your neighbor down the street going to fight for your child? No. I cannot emphasize enough. You must educate yourself and you must fight for your child. And you need to do it. Don't wait till transition time. You need to do it when they're 3 years old and the IEP is just beginning.